The hospital at 3 a.m. has its own kind of silence, not the peaceful kind, not the silence of a sleeping house or a quiet Sunday morning. It's the silence of machines breathing for people, of fluorescent lights humming over empty corridors, of nurses moving in soft-soled shoes past rooms where time feels suspended between this world and the next. Nurse Sarah Mitchell had worked the night shift at Chicago Memorial for 8 years. She knew every sound this building made, the distant beep of a cardiac monitor, the sigh of ventilator bellows, the occasional sob from a waiting room down the hall. She had learned to carry all of it, the weight of other people's worst nights, and still walk through the doors every evening with something left to give. She pushed open the door to room 207 just after 3 in the morning, expecting to find her patient asleep. Maya Thompson was wide awake. The 19-year-old lay still in her bed, but her blue eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling, like she was reading something, written there that no one else could see. Her light brown hair was loose around the pillow. She was thin, heartbreakingly thin, the kind of thin that tells a story without words. "You're supposed to be sleeping," Sarah said softly, crossing to the bedside to check her vitals. Maya turned her head slowly. "I know," a pause. Then, barely above a whisper, "I don't want to waste my last night sleeping." The words hit Sarah somewhere beneath her ribs. She finished checking the monitor, scribbled a note on the chart, and then, breaking the protocol she had followed for nearly a decade, she pulled the visitor's chair close and sat down. "Then let's not waste it," Sarah said. Maya looked at her with the kind of surprise that comes from expecting nothing and receiving kindness. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She had the composed sadness of someone who had already done most of their crying alone. "You have anyone coming to see you tomorrow?" Sarah asked. Maya smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "No one's come in 3 months." Sarah waited. "My parents divorced when I was 9, Maya said, her voice quiet and even, like she'd rehearsed the facts to keep them from hurting. "My dad left first. Just left. New state, new wife, new kids. Like we were a rough draft he threw away." She looked back at the ceiling. "My mom moved to Florida. She calls sometimes. Not often. She cries when she does, so I think she finds it easier not to." Sarah felt the familiar ache rise in her chest, the one she always tried to keep professional, contained. But this girl, this 19-year-old girl, dying in a hospital bed in Chicago, alone since September. She thought of her own younger sister, gone at 22, and she felt the walls she'd carefully built start to tremble. "You've been here alone," Sarah said. It wasn't a question. "It's okay," Maya said quickly. "The nurses are kind. You especially." She glanced sideways at Sarah. "You always check twice." Sarah didn't trust herself to speak for a moment. "I write," Maya added softly. "Poetry mostly. It helps. I write about the window. About the pigeons. About what I imagine the city looks like when it snows." She paused. "Have you ever noticed how beautiful ordinary things are when you know your time is running out?" Sarah looked at this girl, this wise, broken, luminous girl, and thought, "You deserve so much more than this room." Days passed, then a week, then 2. Sarah rearranged her rounds to spend more time in room 207. She brought Maya hot tea when the hospital coffee was too bitter. She listened to her poems. She told her about her 7-year-old son, Caleb, who was obsessed with dinosaurs and once tried to flush a toy T-Rex down the toilet to see if it could swim. Maya laughed, a real laugh, full and surprised, and Sarah treasured it like something rare. But Maya was getting weaker. Everyone could see it. Dr. Reed had taken Sarah aside 2 weeks ago, his voice measured and careful. "We're looking at weeks, Sarah, maybe less. Make her comfortable. Make her comfortable." As if comfort were a thing you could simply hand someone. On a Thursday evening, with rain sliding down the window glass, and the city lights blurred and beautiful behind it, Maya reached out and took Sarah's hand. Her grip was gentle, like a question. "I have a last wish," she said. "I know it sounds stupid." "Tell me." Maya's blue eyes were steady, though her voice trembled once before she steadied it. "I want to see my dad." "Just once," she swallowed. not to yell at him. I'm past that. I just want to look at him and tell him that I forgive him, because I don't want to die carrying this anger. It's too heavy, Sarah, and I'm already so tired. The room was very quiet. Sarah squeezed her hand. I'm not making you any promises, she said carefully, but I'll try. Maya smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. The first real smile Sarah had seen in weeks. It broke her heart and healed it at the same time. That's enough, Maya whispered. That's more than anyone's given me in years. Sarah started that same night. She searched through old patient intake forms, emergency contact listings, administrative records. She spent her breaks on the phone, and she spent her nights following threads. David Thompson, 52, businessman, formerly of Chicago. She found him in Columbus, Ohio, remarried, 2 children, ages 6 and 4. A company in his name, a listed phone number. Her hands were steady when she dialed. She wasn't sure why she expected them to shake. He answered on the 3rd ring. She explained who she was, explained where she was calling from. The silence that followed was the silence of a man confronting something he had long ago locked in a room and refused to enter. That chapter of my life is closed, he finally said. His voice was controlled, but she heard the fracture underneath it. Mr. Thompson. Sarah's voice was quiet and firm. Your daughter is 19 years old. She's been alone in a hospital room for 3 months. She is dying. She paused, letting that land. Her last wish is not to blame you, not to punish you. Her last wish is to see your face, so she can tell you she forgives you. She doesn't want to die with this weight. Another pause. But if you don't come, Mr. Thompson, you will carry it. For the rest of your life. The silence stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. Then, broken and barely audible, I'll be there tomorrow. He arrived at 6 in the evening, a tall man with brown hair gone silver at the temples, standing in the hospital corridor in a dark coat, looking like a man walking to his own sentencing. Sarah met him at the elevator. She said very little. She walked him down the hall. She pushed open the door to room 207. Maya looked up. The moment she saw him, her face changed, cracked open like light through a shutter. Tears rolled without warning, silently, down both her cheeks. David Thompson took 3 steps into the room and stopped. His face collapsed. He looked at his daughter, this thin, beautiful girl he had left behind, and something in him broke entirely apart. He crossed to her bedside. He sat. He took her hand in both of his, and he held it like he was afraid she might dissolve. I'm so sorry, baby, he wept. I am so sorry. Maya looked at him for a long, still moment. Then she whispered, I forgave you a long time ago. Dad, I just wanted you to know. From the doorway, Sarah pressed her hand over her mouth and watched through tears as a father and daughter rebuilt. In the space of a single evening, what 10 years had broken. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing, about Maya's poems, her dreams, the cities she'd imagined visiting, about his regrets, his cowardice, the years he'd buried under busyness to avoid the guilt. He promised to stay. He kept that promise. Maya's 20th birthday was in 3 days. Sarah told no one at the nurses' station. She simply started planning. She called in a favor from Emma, the young hospital volunteer, bright and warm-hearted, who showed up the morning of Maya's birthday with balloons and strings of fairy lights and a cardboard star she'd painted gold. Together, while Maya was taken for a scan, they transformed room 207 into something that looked improbably like a celebration. David arrived carrying a small white bakery box. Inside, a round cake with pink frosting and the words, Happy Birthday, Maya written in careful cursive. His hands were unsteady as he set it on the tray table. When Maya was wheeled back to her room, her eyes went wide. The lights were soft and warm. Balloons drifted gently. Her father stood by the window. Emma clapped. Sarah stood in the middle of it all, arms folded, trying and failing not to cry. Maya pressed both hands to her lips. They sang. Her candle, a single one, shaped like the number 20, flickered once in the air conditioning before. Maya leaned forward, closed her eyes for just a moment and blew it out. Everyone clapped. Maya turned to Sarah. and her expression was beyond gratitude. It was something quieter and deeper than that. "You did this," she said. "Emma helped," Sarah deflected. "Sarah," Maya reached for her hand. "You're the sister I never had." Sarah pulled her into a hug and held on, and neither of them let go for a long time. 2 days later, the numbers on Maya's monitor began telling a different story. Dr. Reed found Sarah at the nurse's station just after midnight. He didn't need many words. She read them in his expression before he spoke. "It's a matter of hours," he said quietly. Sarah walked back to room 207 and did not leave. David sat at his daughter's bedside holding her hand, speaking to her softly about ordinary things. Sunrises, the smell of rain. How Caleb, Sarah's son, apparently once named a stuffed dinosaur after Maya. Stories Sarah had shared that David was passing along now like small, warm gifts. Maya's breathing slowed. The room grew very still. At just past 4 in the morning, her eyes fluttered open one final time. Her voice was almost gone, thin as paper. "Tell my dad," she breathed, "that I'm not scared anymore." A pause. "Tell him, thank you for coming." Her eyes moved to Sarah, and Sarah, "Thank you for being my family when I had none." Sarah took her hand. Maya closed her eyes. The heart monitor's steady rhythm gentled, then softened, then let go. The room was quiet. Outside, in the city, it had started to snow. David Thompson stayed for the funeral. It was a small service, a few hospital staff. Emma, Dr. Reed, a neighbor who had known Maya years ago. David stood at the front and spoke without notes, his voice breaking and steadying itself in turns. "A nurse named Sarah," he said, "called me from a hospital in Chicago and told me my daughter was dying and that her last wish was to forgive me." He paused. "I almost didn't come. I was afraid of what I'd feel." His voice dropped. "Sarah gave my daughter love in her final days. She gave her family when I had failed to be one. She is the reason my daughter died at peace." He looked up, finding Sarah in the back of the room. "I will never, for the rest of my life, stop being grateful." Sarah stood with her hands folded, tears running quietly down her face, and said nothing. Weeks later, on a cold Saturday morning, she drove to the cemetery alone. She brought pink roses, the same color as the birthday frosting, and she laid them against the headstone. She stood there for a while in the quiet. "I'll never forget you, Maya," she whispered. "You made me a better nurse, a better human. And I think you always knew, even at the end, that you were never really alone." The wind moved through the bare trees above her, soft as a sigh. 3 weeks after Maya's passing, Sarah was back on the night shift. Same corridors, same fluorescent hum, same soft-soled shoes carrying her through the 3 a.m. quiet she had always known. She walked past room 207. The door was open. The room was empty and freshly made. Clean white sheets, a blank whiteboard, a window with the city glowing beyond. It, ordinary, ready for the next story to begin. Sarah paused at the doorway. She reached out and rested her hand gently against the frame. Then she smiled, a small, real, aching smile, and walked on. Sometimes the greatest kindness is simply showing up. Maya Thompson taught the world that forgiveness is the last act of love. If this story moved you, if Maya's courage and Sarah's kindness reminded you of someone you love, share this video with them today. And before you go, leave a comment below. Has a stranger ever shown you a kindness you'll never forget? Tell us your story. We'd love to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Soul of Kindness, because humanity's most beautiful moments deserve to be remembered.